Ciao ragazzi, my name is Anthony. Thank you very much for returning back to Football Worldwide. This is the Serie A Roundtable. And first and foremost, I need to give a huge shout out to all of my Aussie brethren for holding it down with me for the first 8 or 9 episodes. It's been one hell of a ride and I can't wait to see some of you guys again. But for today, it is an absolute honor and a privilege to be joined by two very, very valued guests, and I'll go through them one by one. My first guest is an analyst and contributor for 137 PM. He's the host of the award-winning State of Play pod and a contributor for the Athletics Serie A and Gambling section. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome onto Football Worldwide, Martino Puccio. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Hell of an introduction. You do a better job than I do on our own podcast, so appreciate it. I do a lot of half. Can I curse on this or somewhat? It's not real cursing, but half-ass it. So
yeah, that's fine, man.
I think nothing bad.
We're all used to the colorful language of people like Mario Galliano and Jerry Mancini, so we'll take that one as it comes.
I can't supplant those guys, but good
stuff. My next guest is also the co-founder and co-host of the amazing State of Play pod with Martino. He is the co-founder of the AC Milan brothers as well, and writes for Football Italia and has featured on The Guardian and these footy times. Welcome to Football Worldwide, Matt Santangelo. It's a pleasure to have you, friend.
It's a pleasure to be on with you guys. And, it's funny, me and Martin are kind of hopping on at the same time. So we have you 2-1 from the Milan fans' perspective. So it should be fun here.
Yeah, that's all good, man. On some of my other episodes, I'm always outnumbered by some Juventini as well. So it's never a problem. So as usual on this particular show, we're just going to jump right into what's going on in Serie A. Gentlemen, first time I've spoken to you guys properly in the flesh, and what an amazing opening games it's been this season. You know, inconsistency would be the theme for most sides, bar maybe one or two. The first of them being these gentlemen here in their awesome Halloween kits. Didn't receive a great reception from the Napoli fans. I, for one, was actually pretty keen on it. I'll go over to you, Martino, first. Gentleman Spalletti, an absolute character on and off the pitch, and you got to love what he's doing with this Napoli side. So my question to you, gentlemen, you first, Martino, how impressed are you with the start for the Napolitana side, and where do you think it could start going pear-shaped for them? Because at the moment, they're going from strength to strength, Martino.
Yeah, so I was a big fan of this hire, even when it was rumored back in maybe the spring or so, when it was kind of like you could tell that Gattuso's time was winding down with Napoli, and you kind of knew that at the same time, Spalletti was probably one of those main options. He had the 1 year left, I believe, with you guys. Milan obviously didn't want to trigger that because the wages were high. And listen, Napoli has a really strong core, despite the fact that they were declining and missing the Champions League for a couple of years in a row. The talent was there. Everybody knows it. You watch the league. You see every 11 that they have on the team sheet, barring at some positions. Left back gets the most scrutiny from time to time, even defensive midfielders. I always liked what they were doing. Did I expect 8 wins out of 8? No, I would be lying to you if I said that. I think it's just so amazing. And to me, everyone likes to talk about the depth in the attack and how much they can bring to you there. They've conceded 3 times.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. And we've followed this league long enough, the three of us and Mario included, wherever he is at the moment. The best defense wins almost every time.
Yes.
If Napoli is going to be playing like this, and it's a relatively thin defense, like Koulibaly goes down, they're not going to have the best of options. God forbid that happens to them. But this guy right here in the picture, I think he's the most talented forward in this league. And there's a lot of really talented players. One including Rafael Leao. Maybe we might mention him later. Even Lautaro for Inter. I mean, Dzeko in his heyday. There's Morata, Dybala. All these. This guy right here. It would not shock me if this player were to be sold for over 150 to 200 million euros. I think he's that good. I think he's that talented, and he's just scratching that surface of the potential. And after what happened with Insigne's penalty, I expect him to start taking over the penalties as soon as he possibly can, because this guy is dynamic. And I thought he could win Capocannoniere with Spalletti in his system, and he's well on his way. I believe he has like 8 goals in his last 9 games or something like that. Yeah. I think he's just been the best player for Napoli, besides Koulibaly, who's, again, people, I know I'm kind of going long-winded here, but a lot of people tried writing off Koulibaly for a sense. Like, you even see it with like the reports, some of these teams, like they don't want to pay this much money because he's approaching the age of 30. He started that goal that happened yesterday. If you watched it, you see his pressing going up the field, the perfect interception, and the link-up play was great between all of them. Don't get me wrong. and then Victor's amazing athletic header. But Koulibaly is still, for me, you could say one of your three defenders. They're amazing at Inter, but if I were to have to pick a defender for a full season in Serie A, I'm still going to go with Koulibaly. And man, I got to say, all respect to Napoli right now. I mean, 8 out of 8 is something special for a start. But again, nonetheless, 8 games.
Yeah, 100% nonetheless, 8 games, 30 to go. But at the moment, showing the form and the little bit of grit that you need to sustain a Serie A long marathon campaign. Matt, what's your reaction to the first 8 matches of Napoli this season? And do you see a turning point for them for the worst? I know we've seen in history that Spalletti's sides usually go for a little bit of a slump. But I dare say, Matt, this is the best looking squad Spalletti's had in a long time, albeit if they were to lose 1 or 2 starters, we could start questioning that. But Matt, what are your thoughts on the start to the season for Napoli?
It's been a great start. I anticipated Napoli having a very good season, a bounce back season, if you will. I mean, they barely missed out on top 4 last year on the final match day in their I think it was a defeat to Verona or a tie to the Verona.
Defeat.
So they kind of came up short in that sense, but I think it was obvious that they were kind of more so a team that was in need of a not an overhaul, not a gutting of the squad, just someone at the helm that can steady the ship and bring solidity back to this team, right? Because the last time they had that was with Sarri, right? Where multiple seasons they competed for the title, they came up very close, and then it's been Ancelotti. There was turmoil there. There was friction with Gattuso and De Laurentiis, and Spalletti was the guy that was earmarked by every single individual that watches Calcio on a regular basis, and it was only a matter of time when he was appointed, right? And when I'm thinking about this squad, it didn't see a ton of an influx of players coming in the summer, right? There were a team that, and not many teams actually had a big summer, right? Relative to what's going on with the pandemic and the finances and all that stuff. But they brought in some key players like Anguissa. They got Fabian Ruiz to come back to playing the way he was a couple of seasons ago. As Martino mentioned off the top, Victor Osimhen is healthy. Let's hope he stays healthy for the sake of the league, because he is a true star at 22 years old. And by my account, he is an actual better under 23 striker than Vlahovic is when you talk about how overall encompassing his game is. So when you kind of throw all these things into the equation here, in a summer that saw a lot of managers change and a lot of the clubs change managers, that's probably their biggest addition was getting Spalletti in there. Now, I didn't think they were going to be 8 for 8, because it's always difficult to fly out of the gate and just beat everybody. You got injuries, you got COVID tests, and you got just a sort of feeling out of the system under Spalletti. But they're handling games, they're winning impressively, they're winning gritty, they're winning maybe when they're not at their best. And this is something me and Martino have talked about with Milan, and you could even make the case with Inter, right, who have some defensive issues at the moment. They're winning ugly. When you can win ugly, that's a sign of a true title contender in my account. So, and Napoli are right there.
Yeah, I think context is very important at a moment like this. We've never really seen a footballing environment and structure the way it is at the moment. As I've said before, we're still playing catch up from January 2020 COVID. The fixture list, the congestion, the international breaks, we're playing a very, very unauthentic version of the sport at the moment. So those sides that are continuing to win ugly and continuing to win gritty, it's actually a lot harder than it usually would be to get those results. We always speak about teams who win ugly but still go on to win leagues and win trophies. They deserve it. But at the moment, I actually think it's even more impressive if you're getting that done. I mean, you're seeing teams overseas still struggling as well, maybe not the last 2 weeks, but heavyweight clubs in every single league are struggling to adjust to the fixture congestion. So big up to anybody in any league who's doing their bits at the moment. And thank you to the gentleman for commenting on that. Moving along to the next topic, which I'm sure both will be very, very heavily invested in. Martino, over to you first. There's some depth this season, and I've been following you guys for a long time. 2 very, very realistic Milanisti. So you are 2 of the last people I expect to get on here and flout your gums a little bit. But respect where it's given. I like what I see. I really like what I see. So you have the floor, Martino. How you feeling?
I'm feeling positive. I'm feeling good. Me and Matt kind of say it all the time. I had to lure him back over to the positive side of things the other day because he's a little waning. And he was right for a good 45 minutes. I was like, damn, I think Santangelo got me with this one. But, I mean, what Matt was saying was just the resolve that you have when you're down 2-0. And we saw it happen last year against Verona. Verona never beat us or you at San Siro, and we now know why again. But 2-0 down, you look lifeless. You're missing key players. One of the best left back in the league, in my opinion. Whether or not you guys want to debate it, Brahim is one of the best young number 10s in the league, and Mike Magnon was the best keeper in the league so far through 7 rounds. Yeah. That's a big loss, regardless, right? Verona, you should be able to handle something like that. We've seen Milan struggles at San Siro in the past couple years or so. The reason that they made it in the Champions League last year because they were the greatest road league of all time in the 3-point era, and probably since I think the 50s it was. You keep seeing more signs of it. Okay, things aren't happening. Pioli's able to make some subs. Samu Castillejo comes on. Rade Krunic comes on. And, Samu's a guy who was like this close to leaving at the end of the summer. It was a player that Matt and I were just kind of like, I don't understand why he's here. It's hard to sell him given the circumstances. But that's exactly what you want, is a professional, is the preparation that, okay, I have not played in months. I'm out of favor. I'm probably still going to leave this club whenever it's going to happen. And a kid who is from Spain, that is a Milanista. There's plenty of like evidence of it. Like when he went to go celebrate the Champions League in 2007, you see it. And to have someone come in like that, help win a penalty, had the obstruction or whatever the hell you want to call it for the own goal, he was the one who changed the entire game. And that's what it takes. And you saw it last season with Inter. You see it with Darmian and whoever, Vidal, all these other players, and obviously all the other protagonists that they had. You need other guys to step up and help you win 3 points when your other guys aren't playing that well, when there's players out, when managers are having a difficult time selecting a proper 11 that'll help you win a title. It's games like this that, champions like pull off. Not saying they're going to win the Champions League, or obviously not that. Serie A, they're not going to, probably win. It's a long road for that. My thing is this. What they're showing here, and you could probably even say it too, because I'm sure you watch Milan closely as an Inter fan. We haven't seen Milan like this with this kind of fight and quality in a team in a decade. Yeah. Like flat out. Like even last year, they showed signs of it. They don't win this game last year. They don't win this game 2 years ago. And they lose this game probably 4-0 in like 2016. So the fact that we're seeing this team turn it around and we have players like these two in the middle of it that have an uncertain future as well, I'm just over the moon. Again, they set their record now for their best start through 8 games in Serie A in the 3-point era. So again, like great start last year, great start this year. So I'm just happy, but just got to get healthy because obviously that's the biggest question mark.
Of course, well said, man. I would say that watching that game against Verona on the weekend, it just reminded me of last year. Inter went down 2-0 to Torino, and at halftime it was all doom and gloom. And then in the space of 21 minutes, we put the ball in the back of the net 4 times. It's games like that that really show you the psychological level up of your side from the season before. And I think that purpose that invokes that is that everybody in the club, no matter if you're a starter or rotation on the bench, you feel as though that you serve a certain purpose at this club. Last season, Antonio Conte and the likes of the backroom staff like Pintus and Oriali were able to make the players like D'Ambrosio, like Darmian, like Ranocchia all realize that their purpose is just as important as Romelu Lukaku or Lautaro Martinez. And I feel like that's what Pioli and his backroom staff have been able to do, albeit with the help of an amazing leader like Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Zlatan is at the point of his career right now where this Milan side, where he legitimately does not need to be on the pitch every single game. His presence in everybody's head is almost unparalleled from what you see in football from a leader's perspective. It'd be nice to see him on the pitch a little more this season, but I dare say he's just doing exactly what he was brought in to do and why he was chose to stay there as well. Matt, going over to you, man, your reaction to your start of the season and just piggybacking off Martino, are you optimistic heading into the rest of the months? I know that January is going to be a specifically tough period for you guys, losing the likes of Kessier and Benacer in the midfield to the AFCON. What are your thoughts, Matt?
I'm optimistic. Look, I think that if this was at this point last year, I think, Pete, it's a wait and see game, and it still is a wait and see game, right? If we're speaking on what their title hopes are going to be, right? Are they going to be there till the very end, right? A lot has to go right to win a title. I don't care how good of a team you are, especially in the Serie A clubs and the Serie A landscape right now, where they don't have the revenues to spend and get the ton of players like, Premier League sides do and just completely inject a ton of money to patch up things, right? You have to really rely on the first guy, the second guy, the third guy, but also those guys at 17, 18, 19 on the roster who, to Martino's point, like Samu, where everyone was like, wait, this guy's playing like key minutes. This is the guy we're bringing on in the game to make an impact. And he brings an impact. And it's about being ready. It's about embracing your role, understanding your role. And, as you just alluded to, playing your purpose. There's going to be matches, even this time last year in this fixture, where Milan were hampered by injuries. They won the game 1-0 against Verona, and it was Rad Krunic making a wonderful free kick out of nothing. Like, the guy that you wouldn't expect to have a wonder goal from that set piece, he's winning points for Milan. And at the end of the season, we saw how much that played a role in them securing top 4. So it's things like that. It's results like this that I agree with Martino that in years prior, they simply do not get. But I think it's worth mentioning now is that we've seen a very strong Milan side for the better part of 18 months now. So I think it's only fair that people also give credit where it's due to Milan and not saying, well, they got lucky and they're not that good. And this is going to,
I think that's the Champions
off.
League that kind of brought more validation to it, right? Because we beat Inter in the derby last year for the first time, but you guys were missing some players. So there was that built-in excuse. It was Juve has Pirlo and they have Dybala injured, right? There was just all these excuses, but it's like, okay, they got robbed against Atletico. They should have beat Atletico. They played well against Liverpool at Anfield, better than any team has this year. So it's kind of like, all right, at a certain point, and I've said this too, Matt, we both have, like, just give them credit. It's not a big deal. Like, they're good. It's no one's saying they're going to win the treble. No one's saying that this is the best team anyone's ever seen.
Here's the thing, though. I think it's not obviously all Inter fans. It's not all Juventus fans.
Sure.
But a lot of people that we interact with on Twitter on a regular basis are so used to seeing Milan and up until previous couple years Inter in doom and gloom in the gutter, right? So Juventus fans, they're a little fearful, right? Because now they see, well, we're in 7th place. Wow, Inter and Milan are building pretty good projects. They're title contenders. And look at Napoli, they're 8 for 8. Like, we have stiff competition, the stiffest it's probably been in the last decade, right? So that's why I think there's a little bit of a fear in a lot of people's eyes to give credit to Milan where it's due, but they're a real team. And it's frightening when you're getting results against teams like this with the squad that they have, with the deficit they were behind. We haven't seen Milan fully healthy at any point so far. We haven't seen Ibra. We haven't seen Brahim Teo, like the full 11 that everyone has written up coming into the season yet, which makes it that much more exciting to see what the ceiling is for this team this year and going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, coming from an Australian fan who basically grew up falling in love with football when Italian football was at its peak, as much as I despise Juventus more than anything else in the world, one of the underlying things I want more than anything is for Serie A to get back the respect in Europe that it absolutely deserves. And the only way we're going to do that is to have your heavyweights of Milan and Inter going back in there and competing for it. At the end of the day, it's all well and good having your casual representations in there, but we need our big clubs to start representing it again on the big stage to bring some of that respect back to Italy. It's not good when you lose players like Lukaku, Donnarumma, and Ronaldo and Hakimi in the same season. That looks bad on Italian football as a whole. Speaking of, thanks, boys. Very, very well said. Speaking of, the Allegri train keeps on running a little bit over here for Juventus. It was nice seeing them stutter at the start of the season, but I don't think anybody with half a cultural brain was speaking too loud because Allegri, as pragmatic as he is going to get results, and we saw a great example of that against Roma on the weekend. So I'll go to you, Martino, first. Your thoughts on basically how do you think Juventus is going to go as a whole this season? I know it's way too early to predict, but I'm just curious to hear your gentlemen's thoughts on how you thought they were going to go coming into the season post-Ronaldo and adapting. And also, what were your thoughts on the penalty incident against Roma? Because that was one that's still circling the debates on cultural Twitter and everywhere else.
So, listen, I had Juve winning the league prior to the Ronaldo sale. I thought Inter's losses, Milan's still not ready. I really like Napoli. I don't trust them. The Roma clubs, no thank you. And the same with Atalanta. They lost one of the better defenders in Serie A last season. I don't think they're going to be able to replace him, especially with who they got. It just wasn't going to be at that level. I thought, how could you even doubt it at this point? You're going to get Dybala back. Allegri is a much better manager than Pirlo is. No disrespect to him. But obviously the sale changed a lot of things. Locatelli purchase was great. Getting Moise Kean back, I think, was a good thing. and reviving the man onto the right, it's useful. It's not that Bernardeschi is going to reach that ceiling that he reached or was supposed to reach when he came from Fiorentina, but it's about him being adequate and an above average player like he was under Allegri. That's what's important. He needs to get back to that role. Dybala needs to get back and healthy. Morata as well. There's enough goals all over the place, but we all know what we're potentially seeing in the Champions League this week is Rugani possibly starting in the Champions League, right? You got to have Chiellini. Chiellini's tough to hold on to expect him to start all these games. I told Matt this. Matt agrees too. Like, it's tough over a course of like over 38 games with the Champions League. They have a good chance of getting out of the group. I think they will. But it's guys like Chiesa that's going to keep him in games. Like we saw him, I believe it was a Spezia game. He was the reason why they ended up winning that, which is how good he was in that. They're able to come back and win games like this where it's 1-0.
Yeah.
That's what's matter. I think I saw a statistic. I don't know who it was or posted it. 22% of Allegri's wins at Juve are 1-0. It's stuff like that. It's, have I been impressed with how Juve play in general? No, I still haven't. But they're winning. And that's all that matters. It's about the results and the 3 points that they get. I think they're absolutely going to make top 4. Whether or not they end up winning the Scudetto really depends upon health and good fortune and reinvestment in January, because I think it's going to be the 4 that are Juve, Milan, Inter, and Napoli going for this title. Could go on for a while, but again, 30 games as we mentioned. As far as the penalty goes, listen, man, I personally like to say that you should just have continuation. And if the ball goes into the back of the net, why are we wasting some time with a penalty if we know a penalty is going to be there? Kind of like playing advantage in this sport, or just even like in the NFL, for some people who might watch that, you decline a penalty to just accept it and move on and take the better play. It's difficult because we saw what happened, and there was a replay of, like, you know, Locatelli when he want to go dive after the ball and it hits off Mkhitaryan's hand, and it could have been an involuntary handball and they would have not given a penalty for that. It's like back and forth. For me, it's this. Roma still got the penalty.
Yeah.
Roma missed.
Yeah.
You have to capitalize on these situations. I get it. I understand it's Juve in this picture. It looks the way it looks. But the fact was this. Roma weren't robbed of a penalty. It's not like they didn't get their chance. Roma had their chance, and they didn't capitalize. Because the ball goes back in the net, Anthony, we're not having this conversation. We're not saying, oh, there's controversy here. There's Orsato. Like, how could this happen? Listen, man, I hate Juve as much as the next guy, but you got to make your shots. And that was the first one he ever missed at Roma at this point in Veretout, because he's a very good penalty taker. Props to Szczesny, Matt's guy, his fellow Polish guy. Listen, man, Juve deserved to win this because, again, too, I saw people and mostly Romanisti saying Roma deserved to win the match. You don't deserve to win. You have to take your advantage of your chances. Roma didn't do that. This was their best chance all match.
Yeah.
We saw it. Chiellini was playing great last-second saves. Szczesny had great stops. Bonucci even stepped in too. Roma didn't deserve a win. If you wanted to say maybe at best a draw, okay. But again, this is why Juve is going to be a real tough team. But again, I'll take the 8-point cushion from Milan right now. So
100%, man. Matt, what are you saying about not only Juve this season, but obviously the result in this one? I would have to agree with Martino, man. If you're going to be given a penalty, you got to take your opportunities. And Veretout very rarely stutters on his run-up like that, and he just looked out of confidence from the moment he took his first step running up. So your thoughts on Juve so far this season, Matt, where you see them progressing into the season, and your reaction to the 1-0 win against Roma?
Look, we've seen Juventus be written off. We saw it in, 2015, I think, when they had such a miserable start, and it was Napoli and Roma vying for the title like very early on. And I think Juventus were something like 12 points out of first, and they came roaring back and they won another title, right? One of many that they would eventually win. And I look at this Juventus team and I think to myself, I see a lot of people, making them the butt of the joke. Oh, look at Juventus. Everyone thought Allegri was going to come back and completely change his team. They were going to be the team to beat again. And everyone's getting a laugh at their expense, right? And don't wake a sleeping bear, because that's what I see with this Juventus team. They have a lot of battle-tested players. They have an established winning coach who has won a Milan. He's won a Juventus. He knows what it takes to win a title over a long stretch of games, not 2 to 3 games where he can maybe look a little suspect and, win 1-0 as Martino alluded to, which is something he typically pulls out of his pocket very often historically. But we're talking about Max Allegri here. Yeah. And a guy that has a body of work that should be respected. Like, I look at the players top to bottom of this team, and is this the best team that Juventus have had in the past decade? No. The midfield is still thin. Arthur, Rabiot, Bentancur, Locatelli's already a clear-cut starter, and he's already, in my eyes, the clear-cut best midfielder of that crop. They have attacking players. Moise Kean obviously isn't Ronaldo. He's not a direct replacement of Ronaldo. That's obvious. We haven't even seen much of Dybala, who's working on his contract. But as I said, they have battle-tested players. You have guys like Bonucci and Chiellini off a European Championship victory who know what it takes to win over a long season. So before Napoli fans, before Milan fans, I try to avoid this. I banter. We all banter. We get it. But at the end of the day, if you ask me honestly, did I think that Juventus, after the start they had, were going to be not title contenders? Absolutely not. I knew they were going to make some sort of turnaround. And you see it right here, right? I think unbeaten in 7. I think they've won 4 games on the trot. This is Juventus. 1-0, right? 1-0 games. And it's funny because you talk about the 1-0 result, right? Where it's not ugly. It's a typical Allegri fashion. These were the results that Juventus fans were upset with. They got tired of winning, and they were saying, I don't want to win this way. I want sexy football on top of wins. They get Sarri, they get Pirlo, and now they got Allegri back, and they're winning the. So to your point, results matter. Conte is the same way. Results matter, and if this is how they're going to have to get them, and this is how they're going to get to a title or be in the title race till the very end, so be it. I don't think Juventus fans are going to be upset about that.
Me either, man. Me either. Thank you for that, boys. Moving across to my gentlemen who have, unfortunately, just like I would say with the likes of Milan and Juve, have almost been playing patched up squads, patched up football for the first half of the season. But this was an ugly game, man. And this was a game where I didn't like seeing the gentlemen's heads drop. As the game the next day, 24 hours later, I saw a lot of Inter fans saying it's good to see a lot of fight in this team. We're actually happy about it because it shows that they still care. I'm a little bit on the fence with all this. I study psychology, and to me, this is just a brain snap. It's one of the most obvious brain snaps I've seen in a bunch of athletes as well. I think a lot of them need to check themselves, gentlemen, because the magnitude of losing not only Antonio Conte, people need to realize, and I don't think a lot of non-Inter fans realize this, we lost Lele Oriali, which was our assistant manager on the sideline. He was almost the middle ground between separating the craziness and the chaos between Conte and the squad and keeping their heads checked. We had one of the best, if not the best, physical trainers in the world in Pintus as well. We lost him. So, and I'm the top sort of Inter fan where I'll watch every piece of media. I'll watch these guys train if I need to, and I can already see the drop in intensity. I'm not sitting here saying Simone Inzaghi's not a good manager. I'm not here saying he wasn't the right choice, because I actually think he was the right choice at the time. Beggars cannot be choosers. And as I said, we're dealing with a very unauthentic, fabricated version of the sport at the moment, where all of these on-the-spot decisions almost wouldn't happen in a previous generation of football pre-COVID. But I'm going to go over to the gentlemen for their opinion, because all I do is talk Inter on every platform. Martino, what do you think of us this season going from champions to clearly a drop in quality on the pitch and off the pitch? How do you think we can continue on? What are your expectations for Inter this season?
I actually ended up picking them for the title after, the Ronaldo sale. Mm-hmm. Lukaku, Hakimi, I mean, that's irreplaceable. Hakimi, the best right wing back in the world in that specific position, right? It's not even to get with the Trent Alexander-Arnold stuff. Lukaku with Conte, I mean, that was, I'll be honest with you, and I said it the second he left, that was the worst Inter player that I can remember facing. It was the one guy I never wanted to face, regardless of what even was happening with the defense. He stepped up in that derby like I haven't seen a player step up in I can't remember. He was that big of an issue. The relief I have, because it's just massive, because as much as I respect Lautaro, and I think he does a lot of great things, he is not that good of a finisher. He really isn't. Not at that world-class type of level. He could do like some wonderful finishes. And I think one of them, I forget what match it was, when Barella, I say it was the Atalanta game with that first goal. That was a fantastic finish, right? Even the one you saw with Argentina, I think against Peru, that was a great header. there's some instances where I see Lautaro where he has some of the easier chances and he just whiffs on them and he overthinks and he's just wide left, it's wide right, it's over the bar. And it's just like, Lautaro, if we need to replace Lukaku, those have to go in.
Yeah.
And it's not against him. It's not to pick on him, but that's the standard that it is now, because when you lose a player of that magnitude, you need to make up for it. I even see with Jekyll a couple times. We saw it in the Champions League, and I know that's a little separate story with them. But again, too, I think the biggest noticeable drop-off that I've seen has actually been in the midfield. I think the midfield has struggled. Brozovic, Barella, I have nothing against them. It's everything else. The way Conte is able to lift a guy up like Gagliardini to make him decent. Sensi is, I just assume he's a corpse. He doesn't exist. He's just a fairy tale. Last time we saw him was at that pre-show that they had at the Euros, and then he's disappeared ever since then. Yeah. I think that's been the biggest struggle, because if you're not able to handle the ball when you have a guy like Hakan who makes a lot of poor decisions, right? It puts that defense that's very strong under duress. And then it allows that defense to also allow a lot more shots. And you want as least shots as possible when Handanovic is in the net.
Damn straight.
It's not to pick on him. It's really not. I respect the guy. Call a spade, right? He's way past it. He's not.
Martino, you're talking to one of the most vocal, and not anti-Handanovic, but I was saying it when I started.
Are you number two? Are you number two behind Sia?
Yeah, behind Sia, I'm probably number 2, to be honest, man. But even as 2.5 years ago, I started to saying we need to replace him now, because we're getting to the point where last season you can piss the league under Conte by 12, 15 points and look at Handanovic's mistakes and go, doesn't really matter. Oh, this season, best believe they're going to matter.
And it already happened in this first one, right? Because what was it? Penalty. And then even after the spilled shot, you see how slow he gets up, and it probably goes in anyways. But just like the game of inches, centimeters that you have to potentially block that. Just get a fingertip, graze it off the post potentially, clearance out. It's fine margins like that. And they just don't have it at that current moment with him. And it's not, and Morata's under difficult circumstances. I think the Dumfries buy was good. Dzeko was as good as what he could do.
Yeah.
I do genuinely think not to have an aggression in the market to go after a goalkeeper. Like Onana should be here in January.
Yes.
In Milan, if I'm an Inter fan.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this thing where I have to wait till June. If we have a potential of winning this title, which I do think they will, you have to make that move. You have to be aggressive. And I understand Suning's situation, this and that. PIF, I don't know if that's coming your way. I hope not. No, all due respect. But at the same time, like, I do think they need to also adjust to the way Inzaghi manages. And again, listen, we saw, like, the little things where Inter was turning the corner and what Matt was talking about, like doomsday for Milan and Inter. Conte solved that. He was the difference at, like you mentioned, halftime speeches, the intensity of the training Monday through Friday, and also the very underrated aspect of Conte had preparation for once a week after the Champions League.
Of course.
That is, no manager is arguably better with that. You lose that too. It's going to be real tough for Inter. I think they'll be in contention for it. I think top 4 is a lock, but they ain't winning the league by 12 points. If that's what anyone thought. And I'm not to say anyone said that. It ain't happening.
Yeah, exactly, man. Well said. I'd have to agree with the most part. We're in a little bit of a situation right now where, in an ideal world, God bless him, Christian Eriksen would be fit, accommodating for that technical aspect of midfield. Stefano Sensi would be fit, accommodating for that aspect of midfield. So when we're looking at Hakan on the pitch, I always remind Inter fans, guys, this is our third choice technical player. Believe that. This guy was not meant to come in and start. We are dealing with some scraps here, and it is what it is, man. Matt, I'm going to go over to you. You don't need to talk about Inter as long, and you can digress into the next side that we put up on the screen here. But your thoughts on the Nerazzurri so far this season, and also your comments on the other Roman side. We touched a little bit on Mourinho's Roma, but what are your thoughts on Lazio this season as well, Matt? Because Mario and I myself, we said this. On their day, Sarri is going to make Lazio look like the best team in Serie A. But that match day is going to come around once every 4 or 5 weeks. But that last 30 minutes for Lazio was just a Sarri masterclass, in my opinion, man. So your thoughts on Inter, and then digress into Lazio, please, Matt.
Yeah, so I think with Inter, it's funny because as everything was kind of deteriorating with this Inter project in the summer, right, with Conte, Hakimi, Lukaku, and of course the unfortunate situation with Eriksen, I think it was naturally to feel doom and gloom if you're an Inter fan, right, because you're losing a great coach, you're losing one of the best at two of the best players at their respective positions, and Eriksson, who had a great, obviously, second half of the season last year. So it was natural that there was going to be some regression, some drop off. I thought the defense was going to be a little bit more of a backbone in this situation as they were making this sort of adjustment to life under Simone Inzaghi. But results like this against Lazio can happen. I mean, Milan lost to Lazio last year, even when they were playing very well. This is a team that you make perfect sense of, right? A team that Mario's probably bang on about, that there's going to have those moments where sorry ball's being sorry ball, and you have Felipe Anderson, you have Pedro, you have all Immobile and all those wingers, all those creative minds. So Luis Alberto, they're all firing. And they're a team that we saw a couple seasons ago under Simone Inzaghi. A lot of those players are still intact, where before COVID, they were a title contender. Now, I know that's a couple years removed from that, but a lot of that nucleus, that core is still intact. Milinkovic-Savic, the man we have on the screen here, in my eyes, we can make a case he's a €100 million midfielder, right? So they still have great players in certain positions on the field. Luis Felipe, who I thought was going to be a tremendous player under Sarri, and I think we could potentially see that. So the pieces are there, but we all know about Sarri and his teams. They take time. They take very specific players. And when I look at players like Felipe Anderson, who had probably his greatest game, in his return to Lazio this past weekend, of course, it came against Inter. That's a type of move when you look at Lazio and you think, for $3 million, they could have a guy that was a very quality player for them a couple seasons ago. So I think Lazio is going to take time. I was a firm believer that they were not going to be in that top four conversation. They're going to go through some good form, no doubt, and they're going to get some big victories over some big sides. But I think they're another season or two away from being back where they were a couple seasons ago as like a title contender. Because I think truly, when you have a guy who plays the solid football that Sarri does, it's modern. You get the right players in there. It's very, very difficult to keep on reps.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you very much, Matt, and to the boys for talking culture with me so far. We're just going to jump into a couple of side topics before we head off on this day. Dudes, this dude right here, the last 3 or 4 games that he has played, he has stunk up the joint. And we have seen throughout our lives, whether it's in Italy or in other countries, when contract talks collapse to the extent that this one did, you are going to get a bootleg player, a bootleg version of that player. And this guy is not playing the way that we saw his value skyrocket. There must be something horrible going on behind the scenes with Commisso for them to not even be able to come to an agreement, Martino. Most managers and most teams in the world will go up to a young player like this and go, you want to leave? No problem. Just sign this piece of paper right here, and whoever's got the money, you can go wherever you want. But right now, they look like they may lose this asset for free. Martino, what's your honest opinion on Dusan Vlahovic? Because the hype around this kid going into the season was at the level of Victor Osimhen. And we just said that now he's looking like a shadow of that player, albeit they started on the same metric. Really interested to hear your thoughts, Martino, on this young prospect.
I am a firm believer of if a player does not want to be at a certain club and he does not want to be where he is at, you get rid of him. And especially when it is a player that has 2 years left on his contract, a player that has really only had one superb season, right? Last year.
Yeah.
Exactly. And not to rag on him, a good amount penalties, right? And again, it's not to be disrespectful, but it matters. I think you have to cash in on your value. I think, honestly, to be frank with you, this is all Commisso's fault. I think he doesn't understand how to be a player manager in this situation, a player owner, excuse me. Because I understand you might not want to give a player up to another club and sell him early, because where he's from in America over here, there's more of a level playing field with the way the sports are. The worst teams get a better opportunity to get better. We would be able to see potentially like a Lecce, a random club I'm picking, right? That could potentially win the Serie A one day. That doesn't happen here, right? It's the rich get richer for the most part, and you have to be very, very smart, like an Atalanta, to give yourself a chance to compete for trophies. I think it's in their best interest to cash in while the iron's hot. And the fact that they're losing value at this point, because he also comes in with, 60 million euros he wants?
Yeah.
Rocco, with all due respect, my friend, he's not even worth 40 million. And it was one thing with Chiesa, because Chiesa is a known commodity and you get those installments, and he was playing out of position and still producing offensively. This isn't it. You're putting a product out there on the field that it puts Italiano in a difficult spot to try and get the squad in order together. You saw it today if you watch this match.
Yeah.
They are not all there in the head.
No.
Stupid second yellow cards, getting a red card. They were lucky there was an offside on a goal where their goalkeeper probably should have been sent off as well. They're not all there, and it's the same thing again that I keep on saying. Everyone likes to praise Fiorentina for their business over the summer until we see the matches start. And then we see this. We see a player declining that's supposed to be one of the best in the league. And honestly, like, it's probably not best for them to sell in the summer. I mean, in January. But you got to sell sooner than later because it's dropping fast with the year left after this, I believe. So
100%, man.
Matt, not worth $60 million.
For sure, bro. I would say, like, and as you said, with his contract running down, what club's going to pay that in this market at the moment, where you're seeing a trend of players and their agents doing this, doing their own conversations behind the scenes, going, just run your contract down.
The owner is publicly stating that he doesn't want to re-sign.
Yeah,
you're losing your own leverage.
And how, as an owner, that should be one of the last things, if not the last thing, you should say coming out, man. So that it's got Komiso's ego written all over it, man. I agree. Matt, your thoughts on Dusan Vlahovic quickly before we wrap up today?
Yeah, a player I actually saw him live a couple summers ago when I think it was Benfica Fiorentina here in New Jersey, and this is before he kind of became a starting player for Fiorentina. You know, physical player, can run. You know, you kind of saw like what we saw last year in glimpses in that game. And I thought to myself, he actually had that great goal against Inter. If you recall that match. That's
what woke us up as well, man. That one in the last second.
Fantastic goal. Against the run of play, left-footed, fine finish. And you're thinking, this guy's good, right? Then last year he has his breakouts. He had some penalties, but I find it interesting looking at the way that Comiso is framing the sort of player he has. And that obviously he's talented. He's still young. He's still growing in certain aspects of his game. But the way Comiso comes off, it strikes me as that classic, like, Italian tough guy. He's like, I'm going to show them. I'm not going to be played for a fool. And I know what I have. I'm not going to get had on this deal.
It's a classic Italian-American.
Yeah, it really is.
Right. And that's how I see this playing out here. And we saw it with Chiesa. Chiesa wanted to leave. He kind of held Chiesa from leaving a little bit earlier. Eventually, Chiesa got his move. And that was a great deal by Juventus, right? Because, to your point, guys, the leverage here, people are looking at it, they're like, he ain't going to sign a Fiorentina. They're not winning anything. What type of leverage do you have? Not to mention you're coming out and saying he's worth this, this, and this. If you're asking me, he rolled the dice by rejecting big offers from Tottenham, potentially Atletico Madrid, even Milan, who really, really wanted him, or were making 40 million bids in the summer for him.
Yeah, he
should have said, I know this guy's he's not signing. I'm moving on from him. But you have to be able to identify talent and identify your squad. And from optics, how does that look selling a player that just had the season he had in the summer for 40 million? So in Comiso's defense, you can't really win either way, because if you sell him for 40, 50, saying why you're giving up a player that's this quality, one more year, he's worth potentially double that. But if he goes into the season like he's having now, 4 goals, 3 from the spot, and a player that is showing clear limitations in his game, and as Comiso speaks, compounded with the performances he's having, that value is nosediving.
And the contract.
And a nosedive even further. He's not Osimhen, and we're talking this under 23 category.
Yeah.
Haaland is in a stratosphere of his own. Osimhen is right below him. And Vlahovic, I don't care the season he had last year. I need a body of work. I need to show that you can adapt to the modernized style of the way the game is supposed to be played from that position. And he hasn't right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I would be remiss to believe that
he had like one pass today.
That they do weigh some offers in January for him, because I think Fiorentina will be fine. Italiano's done a good job with this team, and if they can get another, like someone like Gianluca Scamacca in there, for instance, who can get you some decent goals on loan and be able to do the job to get you through the season. But I think you got to cash in now, because his value is going to keep going down.
100%. Thanks, man. I was going to end off with something else, but to be honest, I've enjoyed this so much that I can't wait to get you guys on at some other point throughout the season. So there's no point in talking about future prospects This was absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much to Martino for coming on, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Can you let everybody listening know where they can find your work or anything that you do?
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you having us on. I'm sorry that Mario wasn't with us. I haven't seen him since that Mets game. So, but either way, I greatly appreciate you having on here. And it was great conversation with everything too. I always appreciate when it's like level-headed opposing fans of other clubs. It's hard to get that, especially the cesspool that is Twitter. But you can go and follow me on Twitter at Martino Puccio. It's right below here. And obviously my work on The Athletic whenever it comes out with Serie A sports wagering, gambling, betting, whatever you want to call it. And then just everything with the State of Play podcast with Matt. They're going to be recording this week, and 1:37 p.m. There'll be more stuff with there. But for now, just that couple times. Oh, Milan Reports as well as where we stream before and after every match.
Fantastic stuff, man. Thanks again for coming on. And Matt, you too as well. Thanks a lot, brother. Why don't you let people know where they can find your work?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it short. It's on Twitter at Matt_Santangelo, and everything Martino mentioned with Milan Reports and State of Play Pod.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Thank you both to my guests for coming on. And from all of us here at Football Worldwide, we look forward to seeing you all soon. Ciao, ragazzi.